we can have that at the next convergence event that hopefully is beyond virus times. But for the moment, let's move on to the official welcome of the representation of the State of Hessen to the European Union, done by Mark Weinmeister, who is the State Secretary responsible for all of this. So with that, I'm happy to hand over to Florian Kirchner from Sparta, who is going to start the welcoming of the pilots. Laurent, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to be alongside a very diverse and numerous community tonight to deliver the first welcoming words. As you see, we have a couple of exciting days ahead of us, despite the difference and the difficulty to convene physically. And I'm sure we will have other and future ways that we can share beverages and discussions together, I hope in the near future. As a means for introduction, there's Mr. Weinmeister has very nicely framed the context in terms of cybersecurity, and I would probably add the fact that we are now at the start of a new era for the cybersecurity community, and more specifically the European research community, especially with new research programs being launched now in 2021, and we'll probably know a bit further about this in a few minutes. But mostly at stake here is we believe, especially since COVID, the notion of strategic autonomy, the ability to set one's own priorities, make one's own decisions in cyberspace, and together with the wherewithal, the will to convene those, to carry those through institutional, political materials, and this might involve cooperation with third parties if need be, or if to do this alone. So strategic autonomy, especially with the first wave of confinement, is one of the large stakes that we have here in our labs as a community, and I'm glad to be here with you. For this, we believe that to address those stakes and this immense situation we're facing, we need to identify important topics, areas where we can lead high risk, high reward. We need to have those actions transform into and lead to concrete results that in a way that dramatically can impact the way that we think about trust in cyberspace. But beyond those results and beyond those fundamental aspects of research and innovation, we also need to think as a group and through the following days about how exploitation of those results can result in more dramatic and more differentiating capabilities. That includes also making sure that we understand and we think about the impact of those research programs and activities on certification in particular, but also how do we train people to get access to those more advanced technologies and those more advanced knowledge that there are, especially throughout Europe and across in a way that is synchronized across different member states and different regions. Speaking of which, of course, this needs to happen with at core the way that the ethical values for our community and the idea of a responsible governance that includes a wide variety of profiles, of genders, and of prints. And finally, we should be able to address takes as a community to communicate as clearly as we can on those topics. And I think here is a real challenge for all of us. Now, and I will conclude with saying that is alongside the three other pilots and our colleagues here today is tasked with the exciting, but also with the very tremendous task of moving ahead and addressing those stakes. See through those 2 days how this is being addressed by several groups and across different communities. I wish you all a very happy Convergence meeting and wonderful evening. Kai, back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Actually, then I'd like to hand over to Wim Mees from ECHO.
Good evening. I'll try to switch on my camera. So, good evening. Unfortunately, we cannot meet in Brussels. I would have enjoyed that very much, like the previous times. And we have to do it through this virtual way of meeting. But it is what it is. We all know that when you stay inside your own bubble with your own colleagues or with your own project partners, you tend to suffer from some sort of a limited horizon, from a cognitive bias where you reinforce existing ideas rather than open up new avenues and explore new ideas. And that's why it's important to confront our ideas with an open mind, and where possible, identify opportunities to work together in very agile formations, perhaps like we are already doing it with the topical focus groups that we created between the pilot projects. But today and tomorrow and on Friday is certainly an opportunity to do that even more, and to identify possible collaborations where we can work together in synergy to get even better results. Now, what is needed to move forward together is to get to know each other better, each other's work, each other's realizations, confront our ideas and build trust. Indeed, whether it is for negotiating trade deals or for building a network for sharing information like threat intelligence, or for fostering collaborative growth or engaging together towards a more cybersecure Europe, mutual understanding with trusted and trustworthy partners working together towards a common goal is really essential, and it's an essential requirement for future growth. Now, that's why I'm very happy to see the large number of people who are joining the conference, and to see that all the project coordinators took the time to be present here today and open together this joint conference between the pilots, so that we can really harmonize our visions between the pilot projects, to lead the way for the 4 pilots to build together that European network of cyber competence centers, to engage in an open exchange of ideas, to show off our first results, both results from the individual partners and results of already the first joint initiatives of the interpilot activities like the focus groups, to get feedback from the other pilots, from other interested parties that are joining the conference. We're looking very much forward to getting your ideas, getting your feedback with respect to what we will be presenting, perhaps to identify possible opportunities for synergy, for collaborations with other pilots, but also with people outside the pilot network as it is today, and involve you as additional stakeholders in our networks to discuss together the way ahead for the pilots, for Europe, for all of us, and I think the best is yet to come. So I wish you all a very interesting, a very rewarding, a very enriching in terms of ideas and knowledge Convergence conference. And so I pass the floor on to, I think, the next presenter. It's you, Kai, I guess.
It's actually Sotiris. So I'm just your number boy here, handing over from one to another. So Sotiris Ioannidis from Concordia is the next that is going to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm starting the camera. It's loading some drivers and whatnot. I think you can see me now. So on my end, I'd like to welcome everyone to this event. It's great to see so many people here attending. And thank you, Kai, for putting this great event together. My previous speakers, I think, touched upon some very, very interesting points about the effort that's going on and the goals that we have. I don't want to repeat myself with a number of these points. I want to stick to 2 main keywords, I think. And the keywords, I think, that they should come out of these projects, and parentheses, these projects address a lot of things. They address technology, they address economy, they address standards, women in cyber, a lot of different topics. But I think the 2 words that should really guide us is people and unity. I think these are the 2 main points. Yes, we all had our colleagues in Europe. Yes, we all had our little groups that were working together, as Wim mentioned before. But this was a great opportunity, these 4 projects, great opportunity to increase this community, to tens, dozens, hundreds of other organizations and thousands of other people. So people is important. The other thing is, as I said, unity. Can we bring them together? Not together in the sense that we are going to be thinking the same things, proposing the same things, but being able to work together towards a goal. People outside Europe, countries outside Europe are huge, they're powerful, they're united because they're single countries. We are a special case. But through efforts like these 4 projects and other activities in Europe, bringing all the European community together is what builds strength and what is going to help us in reaching this sovereignty that we all are after. So unity and people. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sotiris. That was super fast, and actually, with that we are almost 10 minutes ahead. To be very honest, a bit of this time we had actually planned to be used for any kind of technical difficulties that we may have, and we don't have technical difficulties here. So, and at least not so far. Let's see what I'm going to mess up with.
Great organization, Kai.
Let's see how it goes on. Thanks a lot. Now, if anybody of you actually has anything that you'd like to add, we have about 10-12 minutes for that. And what I can only add at this moment in time, of course, is we have seen very many important things about and why these pilots and why this whole activity in convergence is so important. Let me maybe add that, and obviously we're trying very hard to make sure that this is not just a cybersecurity community by itself, that lots of areas that actually are not really exposed to cybersecurity so far, or maybe we should say that are not knowing or didn't know that they were exposed to cybersecurity or more to cyber insecurity, have actually meanwhile picked up the ball and are participating in the work of the pilots, and you will see that in some of the areas and arenas, be it smart cities, be it harbor security, be it banking, and other areas where you will see, if you look through the program, how things are actually happening and going forward. And that is really good to see. It's also maybe useful to let you know that we have, and why we of course have quite a few people from the pilots who are participating here. We have even more people not from any pilot. That should be, I think, is a good message that is telling us that indeed we are getting through. We have a total of over 500 registrations, and that is probably not for all sessions at the same time, but that tells us that there is something coming through. I may use the opportunity to have a quick look at our agenda again to try to make sure that you're coming back tomorrow morning also, even though the panel tonight should be great, but we expect that more things will be coming that will be interesting. So tomorrow morning, actually, and you will get a more in-depth introduction into all of the 4 pilots, starting after any kind of intro, but at 9:15 with Concordia, and at 10 o'clock continuing with CyberSec for Europe, at 11:15 after a break, and with Echo, and at 12 o'clock with Sparta. So you can have a full morning of pilots and the specific aspects that each pilot is actually offering to all of us. We will then have in the afternoon an introduction into the European Cybersecurity Atlas. That's an atlas that the Joint Research Center of the European Union is going to launch, and is starting it basically to give us all an overview on where is cybersecurity actually happening in Europe. Again, that's also to support this idea of getting us all together here. That is and know of each other. And after that, matching to that, the joint communication groups of the pilots is going to tell us how they actually try to make everybody aware that we pilot exists. So that's probably the guys we need to thank you that we are over 500 registrations for all of that. Then we will have the education focus group, who's going to tell how we can improve on cybersecurity education. And after that, we'll have the cyber rangers. So let's say the education is learning, and cyber rangers is practicing all of that. And then actually at the end of the day, Sotiris will give a summary of the day and will explain you what you've missed in case you wouldn't have been there. So I suppose Sotiris will be perfect in giving a summary. Still, it may be useful to also check a few things of the day before. So that's Thursday. And Friday, we're starting in the morning with an introduction from Wim at 9 o'clock from Echo and for the day. And the day will then continue with threat intelligence, especially in the financial sector. We have a focus group of the pilots among that. Then we'll have our road mapping focus group. You know, one of our joint tasks of the pilots is also to develop research and integrate research into all of these areas of cybersecurity and make sure that we are, well, doing research, in what is really new and important. And we heard already, for example, from Florent that it's important that we're also daring and trying to get something done, but we also need to be relevant, as we've heard from. And we've tried to combine all of that in developing roadmaps that are helping us to do all of these kinds of things together. And after that, well, you have a break, and then you have the governance focus group where we are discussing and presenting the work on how should this joint cyber security center being run. So probably that will also, beside all of the work is done, is already reflect on what the panel this evening is going to tell us. And we know the stakeholders and the politicians have their ideas, and of course we as pilots also have our ideas how to implement that and how to basically shape the negotiations or shape the outcome of the negotiations, but also the work of the Cybersecurity Competence Center as it is going to happen. And after all of that happened, you will see us for pilots back again and with a discussion on how we experience these days and what we see as important for the future. That will be moderated by Luigi Rebuffi from EXO. You know, EXO, sometimes we consider it to be the fifth pilot, the association of all the cybersecurity stakeholders, or very many of them, hundreds of them meanwhile. And they will, and Luigi will moderate all of this, and I'm sure he has also some kind of sharp comments to make on all of that. So that should be worthwhile to stay there even Friday lunchtime, and then Thibaut from Sparta will give us a final summary of that day before then we close the event at some point in time. So this is what we plan, and we hope that will get you, and you find it of course also on the website. Maybe it's an idea to try to put the URL into the chat again in case you haven't seen it yet. Some people have come over this channel, some people have come over other channels. So I'll add that. There you find all of the program elements that we have to offer for you. And yes, with that, I can also say I'm really happy that we got together. We are a large crowd here, and I think we're coming closer to the official beginning of our panel. That we're waiting for. Those of you who have followed the panel announcements have probably seen that we had a few changes over the days. Actually, what is happening in parallel to our panel is that the co-rapporteur group of the Council of the European Council is meeting, and that has, for example, meant that Khalil Rouhana was called in there on very short notice. We only learned about that this morning, so that's why he is actually. He was on the agenda, and he's now being kindly replaced by Miguel Barroso from the European Commission, who is basically working on all of these areas and is also looking after us as a pilot. And so from that point of view, we have these kind of dynamics that you will see. But you always have that when something is really happening. And the good news indeed is there are lots of things are happening actually on the cybersecurity area now. The member states are really making an effort to finish as soon as possible their position so that it can go into the trilogue. Some of that, of course, you will also hear in the panel later. Let's see whether we got any kind of question over the chat that we can address here. Because again, we had reserved a bit of time for technology or anything else not working. And now I'm already talking much longer than I wanted. See whether anybody else has anything to say. Any questions? No questions here yet. So maybe we're going to show the agenda again to people. Or is there anybody with a specific question? This is a good opportunity to ask a spontaneous question to a pilot and to the pilot coordinators. Is there any item about telecom cybersecurity? We have that we don't have that as a name in telecom cybersecurity, but it is being touched in some of the sessions. But let me see whether any of our session leaders is here and who says can have that in more concrete. I know that in some pilots it's happening. Otherwise, I would definitely recommend to take a look at the pilot introductions, where it will also happen because it is the basis for any of the things. And given that, of course, 5G infrastructure is a very important topic, I'm pretty sure that will show up not only in the panel today, but also in our final discussion among the pilots. So that's definitely places where you want to have it. And I know that, for example, an exchange of threat intelligence is something that is dealing with to quite a bit degree also with telecommunications.
Perhaps I just mentioned that we do have some of our panelists for the next panel, but not all of them are there yet. So we're just going to end up having just a minute of break here, just for a moment. I again, just to say to everyone, just a reminder, and everyone has been excellent about this. Keeping your cameras off and making sure that you're muted. This has been excellent so far. As was said before, questions in the chat, and we've already started that. So that's an excellent situation thus far. And it looks like we have all of our panelists our last panelist just arriving. So as such, we should be able to pass to the next panel discussion.
So then thanks a lot, and also for your questions and for dealing with all of this. And we're going to hand over to David Goodman, who is going to moderate our panel. Thanks a lot, and looking forward to see you and also tomorrow again.
Thank you, Kai, and thank you for keeping us going for the last 5-10 minutes. When you said that we're very grateful for nothing going wrong, I'm glad you said that. It's a bit unfortunate because I can't share my screen. Anyway, I hope that'll work in a moment. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our panelists for this evening. We have a really exciting lineup of representatives from the institutions and also from the European Data Protection Supervisor.
Should work now, David.
Okay. No, I want to use my webcam. It's not working. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off by introducing our 5 panelists. First of all, we have Rasmus Andresen, who is a member of the European Parliament. And more importantly, he is the rapporteur for the legislation that we are going to be talking about on and off during the course of this discussion. We also have, we're very pleased to have Despina Spanou, who used to be in DG Connect, but is now, excuse me, but has now moved to head of cabinet of the Vice President of the European Commission, Margaritis Schinas. And we're very delighted to have Despina with us this evening. Unfortunately, Despina has to leave for a meeting. There's a lot going on in Brussels this evening of one sort or another, some of which we'll talk about and some of which we won't. So she may have to leave us sometime before 8 o'clock. Our third panelist is Andreas Könen, who is head of Department of Cybersecurity and Information Security in the German Ministry of the Interior. We also have Wojciech Wiewiórowski, who is the European Data Protection Supervisor, and is not from one of the three institutions, and will provide an external view on what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve. And last but by no means least, we're very pleased to have Miguel Gonzalez-Sancho, who is head of unit of cybersecurity technology and capacity building in DG Connect at the European Commission, and as such is very much responsible for the open file that is being negotiated at the moment. The format for this evening is that each of the panelists are going to be giving an introductory talk for 5 minutes or so. And after we've heard from all of them, we will then open it up for questions from the audience. We'll see what comes out of the discussion, and then move on to questions which you can put in the chat, and I will present them accordingly. So the first one up is going to be Rasmus Andresen. Rasmus, do you want to share your webcam? If you can. Here we go.
Hello. Do
Hello,
we have sound connection problems, or am I understandable?
You're understandable.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Fine. Then I can start. For me, of course, it would also have been okay to start with the Commission, but I'm glad to be here and to participate in this event on cybersecurity questions. As you already have heard, I'm a member of the European Parliament, and I'm the rapporteur of the Cybersecurity Competence Center, and we are in the trilogue right now, where we still need to find an agreement on very important elements. I mean, the Cybersecurity Center has a history longer than the long-term budget, the MFF, and the long-term budget, which is basically more in the eyes of the European public in these days. I'm also working on this, but still we need to finalize the trilogues there, and there are maybe some possibilities for doing so before Christmas, but right now we haven't finalized it, so there is still some work to do. First of all, I would like to mention that one of the main goals with the Cybersecurity Competence Center from the view of the Parliament should be to have a competence center on European level, which actually is adding common European value to the field of cybersecurity. So for us in the Parliament, it's much more than just having a center which is distributing money out of different programs on cybersecurity for the member states. No, the meaning with having a European center like this is to add a value and a European value, and to have a development in the field of cybersecurity, a common development there, because we know that if the member states would do it alone on national level, would deal with it alone, then we all would be weakened in Europe, because we can see that we are in a heavy competition with the US, with China, with other countries, and there we really need to collaborate a lot. And I know many of you are doing this in your work, and I think the member states and the European Union, from an institutional perspective, need to follow. And basically many of the discussions we still are facing in the trilogue are related to this discussion. Basically, should we have common European development, European added value, or should the center be reduced to maybe some coordination and some distribution of the money out of programs like the Horizon program or the Connecting Europe, the Digital Europe program, I'm sorry. And this is basically what we still are discussing. From the perspective of the Parliament, we were quite successfully in including civil society in the work of the center. So, you know, there is a discussion about if there should be added an advisory board for the Cybersecurity Competence Center. There I already can say that we have some positive development, which actually means that we will have involvement of civil society, science, but also industry, SMEs, in the work of the center. And I think this is really important, because there the experts are, and I know many of you would be the ones who would deal with that. And this is really important, and not just for you dealing with these issues, but also from the perspective of the Parliament. And my feeling is that we can have a good agreement on these issues. We will also have a good agreement, I would say, on issues like, for example, including open source, free software, questions like that. We will also have an agreement, I guess, basically on that the center also will help and use technical help with technical assistance, which also had been an important demand from the Parliament on all of these stuff. So the content and the mandate of the center there, I think we are already having some good development right now. On the other side, we are still dealing with basically two very complicated issues, and this is maybe not breaking news for you, because you all know that this is complicated. First of all, the financing part. Who should finance the center, and how should the center be financed? I mean, there will be money funding for the projects through Digital Europe, through Horizon Europe. We all know that there is some regulation and there are some rules following these programs. You also have to follow in the center, but more or less, except from that, we also need to have a structure, and we also need to have funding for the center in more general terms, so that the work of the center also can be financed. Like administration and other issues when we are setting up a center like that. And there we are still discussing, and we're having a heavy debate, because the member states, the colleague can maybe explain it a little bit later, the position of the council, but at least from the perspective of the Parliament, and I guess also the Commission agrees, we can see that the member states are not willing in giving extra funding to that, so they would just have it on voluntary basis. And this is something where we as Parliament at least are saying this is not good enough, that we need to have a clear commitment. If you want to agree on a center like this, then you also need to do the work, and part of this also has to be the funding of the center. And related to this, we are having a debate also about the governance and the question of who will decide about the program of the center, who will decide about what the money should be spent on. There we are also facing legal and political debates, I would say, at the same time. In legal terms, we have to follow the rules we can see for Digital Europe and for Horizon, which means that there are, on Digital Europe, for example, this is a common European program managed by the European Commission, which means that the decision also is in the hands, or should be in the hands, of the Commission. This is also a legal question, and from a political perspective, of course, also there we would like to see a deeper involvement, European involvement, which means that the power also should lay in the hands of the institutions based in Brussels, which means that this would be the Commission, and maybe there could also be a role of the Parliament, but it's not like the member states should decide everything. We need to have a strong role of the European Commission to secure that from a legal perspective, but also from a political perspective. And this is still to be discussed, and this is why I'm mentioning it here. And maybe these points are the most complicated points. I mean, you can see that this is something very complicated, and of course everyone has own interest there. But this is something where we need to find an agreement, and where from the perspective of the Parliament, we at least are very interested also in finding an agreement. I mean, we have worked on the center for many years now, and from our perspective, it's time to go the next steps, to agree on the proposal, and afterwards we can set up the Cybersecurity Competence Center. We shouldn't lose much time, but on the other hand, we also need to secure that we are having a good solution where not just everybody can agree on, but where we are also sure that also in legal terms, this is something which will work out. I think I will stop here. There are many interesting people on the panel together with me, and I'm glad also to get into the discussion and yeah, also to hear the other the colleagues with their perspectives on the negotiations and cybersecurity in more general terms.
Thank you, Rasmus, very much for that very open and comprehensive view of what's happening with the negotiation, including your transparency about the issues that still remain to be resolved. From the way you describe it, getting it all done before Christmas sounds like a major achievement, but I have every confidence that you have confidence in doing just that. So I'd like to move on now to Despina Spanou, who will give us her short introduction. Despina, over to you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you very well.
Thank you. Very good. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your kind introduction and for your patience, and for changing a bit the order around. I will try to stay as long as possible. Then to say hello to all the friends in the panel, because this is a panel of friends that I have worked in my previous job, and all very important for the creation of this Cybersecurity Competence Center. So Rasmus, thank you. We spoke last year when you took over this file. You remember I came to the Parliament with Miguel, who is speaking a bit later, to explain to you what it is about. Andreas as well. I have come to explain this file many times to you and your colleagues. So back then, I was seeing the file from the perspective of its technical importance and its technical feasibility. Since then, a lot of things have changed. So this is a file that moved through the time, not only because of the intricacies of its legislative nature, but also because times have changed. So in my current role, I would like to be helpful in this process also to Rasmus by sharing with you where we are in cybersecurity in the Commission and where this center would fit and why it is necessary to get it done with when it comes to the legislative process, and then make sure it works in the best possible way. So first of all, cybersecurity has now become truly a part of this flagship of the von der Leyen Commission that is called the European Security Union. And the Vice President I work for, Margaritis, who was actually in the press room today talking about security, is responsible for bringing together all security angles and breaking these silos between digital and not digital. In the Commission, we have often linked cybersecurity to our digital possibilities and potential in Europe, but cybersecurity is about protecting the whole society. It's about protecting people. It's about protecting the internal market. It's about protecting companies. It's about protecting critical infrastructure. So it's not just about the digital life of people. It is about their whole life. So in this commission, we have made that a bit more visible. It has become our narrative. In July 24th, on July 24th, we adopted the European Union Security Union strategy, the first of its kind. And there we changed a little bit the narrative. So in the previous security agenda of the European Union, we were saying we have to protect the people online. And this is where we were entering cybersecurity. Now we don't even make this distinction. We consider that cybersecurity is a pillar of security. So the Cybersecurity Competence Center would also become a very important part of this pillar, and I will come back to that. The second thing that we have done is to not look at security from the perspective of the means, but the perspective of the threats. So what are the threats coming? So yes, we still have threats of very basic terrorist attacks. So what happened in France and in Austria recently show us that it takes one person with the wrong intentions and a car or a knife or something very simple to implement and have an impactful terrorist attack. But you also have much more sophisticated cyber attacks and attacks to our critical systems. We saw in COVID that hackers were trying to attack hospitals. Today, we had the cyber attack on the European Medicines Agency. So it is about where the threats come from, because this is what is changing. And the means do not necessarily evolve. And again, this is where the center can play a role. Then we have also looked at something that is very important. Do we have in Europe what it takes to be ambitious on securing our citizens, our internal market, our societies, our economies? Do we have the people that we need? Do we have the know-how we need? Do we have the understanding? So that's another big objective, the understanding of and having the right expertise. So looking at all that as the principles that are the main elements and values of the Security Union strategy, I believe the Cybersecurity Competence Center can do many things. First of all, when it comes to the threat landscape, I can think of no better organization than the way this center has been built. Because when we were designing it, we basically said it's very difficult to have enough knowledge to deal with the threats that are coming. And you have some people in one part of Europe that understand threats coming from artificial intelligence, others that understand more traditional threats. So how do we make sure, first of all, they don't duplicate, they don't have gaps, and how do these people work together? And this is where the idea of the network came for the cybersecurity centers. And this is where bringing people together and pooling expertise came up. So I think that in dealing with the threat landscape, on top of the expertise that is already offered by ENISA. ENISA has a very important role. It's an agency that has been traditionally creating the threat landscape for Europe. But on top of that, I think the Cybersecurity Center, by being a more operational hub, can really help in identifying the big threats and then targeting money and resources in the programs that will manage this, where we have gaps. Because it's not just about identifying the threats, that ENISA can do very well, but then it's about identifying the solutions. And I think there the Cybersecurity Center with the community can play an enormous role. Then I don't know what the latest is in the negotiations. What will the latest be of resources? But Rasmus, I'm sorry, I have to tell you that this has not changed in our view in the Commission. The more resources you pool, the more this will be a real competence center. In cybersecurity, you cannot make discounts. You cannot have this territorial partition, what is research, what is not research. Whatever you can put in the pot for security, you must. You must pool all your resources because we will never have enough. Today, we adopted the counterterrorism agenda of the EU. You will see it was quite a lot on the news. Our president asked us to advance it because of what happened in France and Austria. And I mean, again, there it's very basic. And with the connected Internet of Things society, hackers will be using our fridges and our lighting systems in our homes to generating very disruptive attacks that are basic to create. They don't take much resources. But you need to have the foresight for that. You need to have the understanding. And that's where the Competence Center can play an enormous role if they have enough money and enough programs, because sometimes it takes research, sometimes it takes something more operational. Very important, the Competence Center must become the European hub of understanding how to use new technologies, not only how to fight against them when they're used to attack you, and I'm talking, for instance, about artificial intelligence, but also how to use to respond. Other new technologies, big discussion on 5G, toolbox around Europe. How are we going to implement all that? There will be more technologies. There will be 6G. The Competence Center must be there to help us with know-how. And the great thing about the Competence Center is that it pulls together private and public resources and know-how and understanding, but then it is always subjected to the member states' decision. So we don't lose the political, if you like, decision-making that is a very important part of the European process. And then, of course, the big problem we have, I remember when we were consulting for the creation of the centers, all the experts, some of them are there with you today representing the pilots, very, very good friends, were telling us you have to do something about skills. The skills shortage is massive. And we did put the commitment in the updated skills agenda that we adopted in the von der Leyen Commission, and actually it's Vice President Schinas who's in charge last July. We said cybersecurity is a test case. We need to have an enormous increase of the people we have. But how will this come about? That's again where the Competence Center can play a big role, because if we don't have the skills, we won't be able to fight against our threats. Last but not least, let's not forget the strategic element. One of the reasons why we created the Competence Center is indeed to increase Europe's capability. In an open manner, everybody is in. The private center, be that of European or other origin, will be part of the community, but in the network. But it is very important that Europe has a capacity. And I think that there, the Competence Center will play a great role. If you look at the communication on the EU-US agenda that we adopted last week in the European Commission, which is basically our narrative for the relations with the new administration in the US, we put cybersecurity or other relevant issues like 5G on this agenda. For Europe to be able to do that, we need to be able to have our own competences. And again, this is where the center can make a difference. So this is all I would say for now. I hope that it is giving you a bit of a taste. I would also want to just give you an appetite for what's happening next week. So next week, you will see the Commission coming in with a very powerful cybersecurity narrative. There will be a new cybersecurity strategy, putting together the stepping stones on what we have built already, and then looking forward a bit to the future on what is missing. And we will adopt two proposals about the protection of our critical infrastructure, where we're really stepping up our game. We're going beyond the current NIS directive. We add more sectors. Again, if you look at what happened to the European Medicines Agency today, it's not by coincidence that in COVID times, the few days after the submission of the for the authorization of the vaccines for COVID-19, and after the labs that have been developing and the research for these vaccines were attacked, we have a cyber attack. So you will see that we're trying to cover also these areas. And there again, if we're going to protect our critical infrastructure, we need the means. We need to know how we will do it. And this is where the center will play a role. So more pressure for the opening and the operation of the center will come also from the legislation itself in the effort of Europe to protect its systems as much as possible. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity, and I hope it was helpful also for the discussion.
Thank you, Despina. It was enormously helpful and very insightful. And what is really interesting is we've been so much focused on cybersecurity. You've really opened up the picture of what the Commission is doing on the broader security landscape. And I very much liked what you said about not making a distinction between the digital and the non-digital, and how important of that. And the idea that cybersecurity is just one pillar in the European security strategy is, for us who have been heads down looking at cybersecurity, it's like, okay, there's more to it than meets the eye. You'll talk about terrorist attacks and cyber attacks on as a result of COVID, and the introduction of vaccine is too scary to even contemplate, but thank you for bringing it up. So moving on to our next speaker, who is Andreas Könen, who is head of department of, as I mentioned before, of the Cybersecurity and Information Security in the German Ministry of the Interior, and is representing, for our sakes, the Council during the course of the German presidency. So Andreas, we look forward to hearing from you now.
Yeah, thank you very much, and a good evening to everyone out there listening to this conference. Hopefully you can understand me.
Yes, we can hear you fine, Andreas. Fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, clearly for us, we are going now towards the end of our German presidency of the Council of the European Union. And so actually, I would like to talk today's evening not only about the cybersecurity competence and the network. Clearly, that's at the focus of this conference. But I would like to give an additional insight in one other topic, which is, in my opinion, closely related to what the Cybersecurity Competence Center should be about when it starts next year. And so let me give, first of all, a short introduction to the IoT Council conclusions. On December the 2nd, the Council adopted ambitious conclusions on strengthening the security of devices connected to the Internet. You are all aware of that connected devices you're using yourself, most of them already today, and it becomes more and more a common and sometimes purely invisible part of our everyday life. That's important. On the other hand, this ever-growing number of cheap and simple devices poses also a reasonable threat to our cybersecurity landscape, because they are bringing not an adequate level of security, and there's a major concern that we could suffer cyber attacks from this growing number of not so good secure devices. One example is the Amnesia 33 weakness, the Amnesia 33 weaknesses that we became aware of during the last few days. And if you count not only the weaknesses, then you will see that approximately 150 services and products are already affected by those weaknesses in the arena of IoT devices. And that shows that we really have some work to do. So actually, the Council conclusions underline the importance of accessing the need, for example, for horizontal legislation on the long term to address all aspects of ICT security of those connected devices, such as availability, integrity, and confidentiality. We stress that the ICT security requirements should be defined with the Union's legislation, especially what we already have in hand with the Cybersecurity Act, the new legislative framework, and the regulation on European standardization. That's a future horizontal way to new legislation to avoid ambiguity and fragmentation in this important area. So actually, what we say is that we acknowledge the important role of all stakeholders in this area, in particular of the manufacturers, for possible future legislation that goes well across all sectors in the digital single market. The conclusions finally underline the importance of assessing the need for horizontal legislation in cybersecurity of connected devices. In the future, requirements written down in the Cybersecurity Act, respectively in the certification scheme, should be combined with the mandatory regulations for the market entrants within the new legislative framework, such to speak as a bridge between the two worlds. And that's the point where I now switch over to the Competence Center. it's notably important that Horizon Europe and Digital Europe, as well as private investments, create those valuable incentives we need to make progress in the development of security standards for IoT. So now let me switch to the Competence Center. Actually, after more than 2 years of intense discussion and enormous work of the previous presidencies, we are able to settle now many open issues on the Commission's proposals of a legislation for a cybersecurity competence center and the network of national coordination centers in the last month. I would have been glad to give you a final report on that file, but however, there will be another political trilogue scheduled later this week, and I hope that will be going to be the final one. But as you all know, nothing is agreed until the last detail is agreed on, and nothing is perfect before the final handshake. So that goes even with virtual ones. So you will understand that I, in a position coming out of the German presidency, I'm unable to go into the details of ongoing negotiations, but alone speculate about possible compromise solutions. What I can say is that we did hard and constructive work with all our co-legislators during the trial. It has been my strong impression that there's broad consensus that professionally managing the EU cybersecurity research and development funding and interlinking them with the support of a strong cybersecurity community is a major key to strengthening our cybersecurity landscape and thus Europe's technical sovereignty. So let me speak not so much about the coming trilogue, but let me have a look into what will happen next year with the Cybersecurity Competence Center and especially the network. In my view, it's totally important that we dive into all those valuable cybersecurity insights we already have at hand. We have at hand in each of our member states, that we connect those, let's say, for example, offices that are in the cybersecurity arena since a long time, and that we bring all our research insights into this competence center. That we start immediately, not only with setting up new research within the Horizon 2020, but also to build on what we already have seen, that we, for example, use the work of the 4 pilots who have done during the last years to make this work as quickly as possible. That's very important in my point of view. And for example, the German BSI will be such a partner in this new network. On the other hand, I think it's very important that we go much more towards what our partners in industry can do together with us. It will be very important to lift all those cybersecurity ideas, services, and products that will show up coming out of our first research steps, that we make it useful very quickly. I already mentioned IoT. We need this because we see so much bad solutions on our market that we have to start out with security by default and security by construction from the beginning. So that's the second important part. And the third part is to bring all those people out of the community of our countries also in reach of all those projects, so that we can discuss with all those interested in making our cybersecurity work more secure, that we can profit from their insight and put it aside the decisions we have to make in research and production. I think that's something that will come out of the Competence Center anyway, besides the precise questions how the final trialogue may happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. It's really interesting to hear the work of the Council in progressing and strengthening the legislation on internet-connected devices, which was also highlighted by Despina. as being a major threat going forward in the future. The idea that we could be attacked in our homes through not so secure devices is very alarming, and there's a lot of work to be done there. And there's certainly a great potential for legislation, as well as the involvement of industry and the center going forward. So thank you for that. I'd like to move now to Wojciech. Wojciech is the European Data Protection Supervisor, and we very much look forward to hearing your view, Wojciech.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here at this conference, even in this way, even this virtual connection. Well, that's, I guess, my conference organized by the Cybersecurity Competence Center and Network. And I treat this part of our cooperation with the Cybersecurity Society very, very serious, because I can imagine that the role of the competence centers will go much farther than just being the contact points, just being the places where the information is stored or from which it is disseminated about the pros, cons of the cybersecurity solutions, and also on the practical tools that are there. I always underline that the importance of the importance of the connecting cybersecurity and data protection. We all recall that the majority of the stakeholders in the who were participating in the survey last year wanted the data protection authorities to play a role in the future of the governance in the new policies that are created in this area. One of the reasons for this could be that the data protection authorities may have the broader perspective in the field than the pure technological protection and only the protection of the information assets. We try to stress after my predecessor Giovanni Buttarelli that we are not protecting the data. We are protecting the human beings, and the human beings are over this data in the data protection. They are over this data also as far as the cybersecurity is concerned. And even if the cybersecurity is, even if this part of the cybersecurity, which are more connected with securing devices or securing the resources, these risks we look at in these projects concern the people and their rights. First and foremost, we consider the individual fundamental rights, human dignity, freedom of expression, self-determination of the individual, and privacy. Data protection safeguards are there to protect these individual rights of the people, and they are not protecting the data. But in the world where the digital tools are the basis for almost all social transactions, and they determine how the interactions will happen in our society, we have to consider other societal values as well, such as the rule of law, the equality in the diversity, the absence and fight with discrimination, and also fair economic rules between the competitors in the market, and also fair rules between the companies and the consumers. This current COVID-19 pandemic, which we are going through, has accelerated the shift from the physical interactions to the electronic tools. We can see it in our event today. Even when the direct contact will become possible again, many of the digital solutions will remain the part of the future life. We live differently, we work differently, we educate differently, the decisions are taken differently at this time. Therefore, we have to make sure that we shape the electronic environment in line with the values which our union and our cultures are based on. Preparing our EDPS strategy for the years 2020-2024, we had it in our mind because the title of the strategy is Shaping the Safer Digital Future. Safer Digital Future. Many technologies are developed around the processing of the personal data, and we have electronic communications in new dimensions as tools we are using now also for retail, for the financial transactions done via internet, but actually to most of the things which we do. And I like this, what Despina said about having cybersecurity as the pillar of actually everything in the economical and societal development in Europe. More and more elements of this value of the value chain for everyday goods move into the internet economy. This economy favors huge platforms with scalable resources over the small businesses. Economic of concentrations is one of the outcomes of the situation that we have at the moment. As the central hubs, platforms acquire incredible volumes of personal data in this process and can use it without much restrictions and oversight in some parts of the world. Some of the scholars warned us about the spread of surveillance capitalism. I don't like this notion, but I have to say that the data became something which is used as a commodity, although it is not commodity, especially when we are thinking about it as the personal data. The data protection authorities are confronted every day with the reality of the cybersecurity in the organizations, and they supervise that. And since the full applicability of GDPR, we even have the specific measurement for this, which is data breach notification, which tells us every day, really every day, that there is much to be done in information security on the general level, on the individual level. General level of cybersecurity is not satisfactory. Let's say a few words about security and encryption. Let me be very clear. The data protection authorities are not the obstacles for the security. They are in favor of that. However, it seems that we have a kind of conflict between the two perspectives of in the security community. On one hand, too many organizations are not up to date with cybersecurity, and they suffer attacks, ransomware, e.g., but also targeted spying, which we also said about today, and these attacks that we heard about on European medicine agencies that are the best examples of that. On the other hand, some authorities want to weaken the security measures to increase their surveillance options, for example, by limiting the effective encryption. And the data protection authorities, among the data protection authorities, we are used to see both sides of the coin and considering the risk of impacts and impacts of the measures. Council and the other EU authorities in the legislative process should think about it as well. Should narrow one's perspective on the single tool can make them blind for the other possibilities. So the best solution must be found, and it may require the investment in the relevant investigative services and training of the staff. We also have to remember that the expectations toward the cybersecurity competence center and network are really big. Coming back to this initiative and talking about this initiative, we note that there are efforts in capacity building for the cybersecurity, and they are really very necessary. I want to underline that I hope that the project teams are aware of the need of the safeguards for fundamental rights in their work, not only the data protection, but also the privacy and all the rights which are derived from the human dignity. The development of the cybersecurity capabilities and competences must be guided by the values. It must not narrow to purely technological perspective and to the business assessment, risk assessment, economical risk assessment. The governance structure of the new entities should then reflect it, and the data protection authorities offered the help in it. And I know that this cooperation goes on not only on the level of the European Data Protection Supervisor, but mainly on the level of the national authorities, which are the best fitted for that. We agree that there is a great need for improvements of skills and good practice in the field. This need to coincide with the objectives of the capacity building. The development of the skills for individuals to the better focused training, but also the development and the dissemination of the standards for the organizations, how to apply these rules in the structures. It's very important and urgent that the organization apply the best state of art in practice. GDPR uses this notion. It has set the legal ground for this with the obligation to apply the principles of data protection by design and data protection by default, as it was already recalled by the representative of the German presidency. These principles shall be applied and developed and supported by the good practices that the centers should help in creating. This broader picture, which is seen in the European Data Protection Strategy, drove us to the title Shaping the Safer Digital Future. High standards in data protection and in cybersecurity, which are widely known by professionals and applied in practice as a part, they can be the part of the answer, but they are not the full answer. Europe has been relying on the global markets to provide the choice of the technologies and services that we need to develop of our own digital services. More and more actors now come to the conclusion that the products from other parts of the world may not be made to fit the European way of life. And we have to be more cautious, and we may have to put more efforts in developing and shaping the innovations in the societies and in our economies. One of the tests will be the deployment of the artificial intelligence tools. Will we be able to develop AI the European way? Maybe this will become the post-corona European moonshot project. I hope that we will be able to help in it as data protection authorities, and we are really open for this kind of cooperation. I really encourage all the colleagues from the EU legislative institutions to put all the elements into focus of their strategies and not to lose the lesson that was given to us by the acceleration of the development during the COVID crisis in 2020 and part in 2021 indeed. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for the discussion. I'm ready for the future work.
Thank you, Wojciech. That was a very interesting perspective from, as I was saying earlier, from outside the institutions, and to see how the European Data Protection Supervisor sees the synergy with what's going on in the institutions and with the center going forward in the future. It was interesting that you highlighted also the need for digital sovereignty in Europe, which is certainly one of the major concerns that we've discussed within the four pilots. and it's an open question, which is a horizontal thing, which works across different technologies, and certainly in many areas, there is a strong case for Europe to take a lead. So last but very much not least, I'd like to turn to our final speaker, Miguel Gonzalez-Sancho, who is the head of unit at DG Connect in Unit H1, which is, I think I once said this before, the godfather of the legislation that we've been talking about so far during the evening. So Miguel, the final thoughts in this part of the session, over to you.
Good morning, David. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's evening already.
Good evening. Yeah. So good evening to all the participants, many members of the pilots and some others not, and good evening to my fellow panelists tonight. So from my side, I will just say a few words to conclude, the panel interventions. I don't need to recall the increasing importance of cybersecurity, also from the EU policy perspective. In the Commission these days, we are busy putting the final touches to the new cyber strategy that will be adopted next week. As an important part of the digital priority in European Union policy, which is one of the top priorities for this Commission, together with the Green agenda. The cyber strategy that will come around 3 years after the last strategy, it was found necessary to renew the political, let's say, push on this area of cybersecurity, because things have evolved very quickly in these last 3 years. So it is necessary to renew that strong message of the need for cyber resilience in Europe, of the value chains of critical infrastructures, of connected devices and so forth, and then contribute to that message that has mentioned before in this panel of strategic autonomy. Open strategic autonomy is the word that is used mostly recently. So in this cyber strategy that will be adopted next week, there will be a very important piece, which will be the proposal from the Commission for a revision of the NIS directive, Network and Information Systems Security Directive, which is the cornerstone of European policy on cybersecurity, which is very much the instrument to support a member states' readiness and capability in cybersecurity and cooperation. But there will be also an important message also about the need for strategic investment in this area of cybersecurity, for joint efforts to support jointly innovation on cybersecurity, of course, but also take up industrial capacity, to address the user ends, skills, and so forth. So they need to join efforts and resources in around strategic priorities. In that regard, the European Commission is working on the next work programs, funding work programs that will support cybersecurity, where the financial effort has been increased, particular Horizon Europe program for research and innovation, the Digital Europe program for industrial capacities and uptake, and also the Recovery and Resilience Facility, for that matter, which will have an important, as you know, there's an important priority put on digital, could also support, for that matter, cybersecurity efforts from member states. And as part of this investment, let's say, important pillar of cybersecurity, there is the Competence Center network proposal, which sets proposes a let's say the governance side and the vision of this investment pillar of the European cybersecurity strategy. So it's a center, of course, the European Center, with it's very much about European funding under the same roof, but also member states funding to decide about strategic priorities and then to manage them. But decision is very important, doing that together. It's about the network of national coordination centers, very important, and the community structured. At the end of the day, with the objective of making a stronger, having a stronger ecosystem, cyber ecosystem in Europe, including SMEs, including a user side and society at large. An important element of that, which underpins much of the the approach, the philosophy of this proposal, is collaboration. It's collaboration around with the many actors that are there in Europe, in the cybersecurity broad landscape. It's about joining efforts, building on the collaboration experience for several years, in particular from EXO, European Cybersecurity Organization, but also for many research efforts, for many researchers, many of which supported by European funding. And in this context, the four pilots that organized the conference today are instrumental of this joint effort. Of course, the work they do on the substance for research and innovation is quite important, but also it's very important the collaboration that they undertake within the pilots, because these are large networks with dozens of partners, between the pilots, but also with the Commission, of course. We work very closely with EXO, with ENISA, and with others. And the Atlas, Cyber Atlas that will be launched these days, that Kai mentioned before, which is a sort of mapping, a dynamic mapping. It's of cybersecurity efforts in Europe. It's one let's say additional step in that direction of joining efforts. So this takes me to the Competence Center and Network proposal. The work has been quite intense. I mean, it's been 2 years, but especially in the last days, last weeks and last days, it has been very, very intense. And this is the final, hopefully the final push. Thank you very much to the Parliament and to the German Presidency for very good discussions, very constructive discussions. I'm not going to say anything about the details of the discussion. The Commission at this stage of the negotiation remains neutral, trying to help as much as possible the co-legislators. As we are speaking, the file is being discussed in the Council at the COREPER level, where the German Presidency is seeking a revised mandate to go to trilogue, and then also later this evening we will have a decision from member states. They will propose, they will decide on a seat for the Competence Center. So that will be also happening tonight. And with that, I very much hope for a political agreement this Friday at the trilogue. There are still some issues, as the representatives from the co-legislators have said, but my impression from the Commission is that we are really getting very, very close, and that I think I have heard still tonight and throughout the negotiations that this is a necessary component, this Competence Center and Network. It's a necessary part of the architecture to have a stronger joint EU approach towards cybersecurity, which itself is necessary to have a stronger digital European Union, which cannot happen without cybersecurity. So I'll leave it here. I wanted to keep it short. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel. Those are very optimistic and also insightful statements towards the end, that we should be able to appreciate a decision this evening from the co-repper and the decision on the center and the location. So what Rasmus was saying at the beginning of our session, that we should have this signed up by Christmas, almost seems realistic, which is very exciting indeed. One of the things I wanted to pick up on from what Despina said, Despina has unfortunately seems to have had to leave already, was she talked about the importance of people. And this was also picked up by Wojciech, who asserted that the EDPS is there to protect people, not data, people's rights. And one of the things that I think we're very conscious of is that we live in a cybersecurity bubble. And how can we, through the center or elsewhere, through the new strategy that Despina was talking about earlier on, reach out to the broader community within Europe of what we're doing, and to transmit some of the important information that needs to be made aware, people need to be made aware of in protecting themselves and their assets. Would anybody like to address that? Is there anything that the center could do, or the network? No? Yes, Rasmus, please.
Yes,
You're on.
thanks,
Yeah,
thanks, David. I wasn't sure if you asked basically asked what just to be very brief on this question. I would like to say that I think that the structure of the center is. Do you understand? Me?
Yeah.
Some are saying no, some are saying yes.
There's an echo.
Okay.
And it's not our Echo fellow partner, but pilot, but another Echo. So maybe Rasmus, you can go closer to the microphone.
Actually,
Yeah,
I think David
but
needs
the
to
same,
mute.
like in my opening remark, maybe it's because, yeah, right. Now everyone is muted, so maybe this helps. I just would like to mention that I think that the center can do something there, also because like the setup of the center is, and of course we need to agree on this first, but let's be open about this. There is a chance for having an inclusion of different actors when it comes to cybersecurity, and this means that the Cybersecurity Center, also together with ENISA and others, could at least be a framework or a place where questions like that will be discussed between the institutions, European institutions, the member states, and also civil society. So for me, I would like to answer with a clear yes. At least there is a chance for doing so if the different institutions and experts being part of the center would like to do so.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to pick up on that one? Wojciech, you mentioned people in your introduction. Do you see ways in which we can leverage all the energy that the Commission and the institutions are putting into the new strategies and the funding that is going to be able to make a difference down to the community level?
Well, I guess it's quite. Oops. Once again, we have an echo.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, David, but I guess the echo is. Oh, now it's you are muted as well, so there's no echo anymore. Okay, so I think that's quite obvious for all the pilot projects and for all the people who are preparing the centers in any sense of the preparation process, that this is these are the projects that are prepared in order to serve the community. And this is not in order to serve the technologies. It's not in order to serve the economy as such. It's to defend the persons and to defend their rights. And the developing of the economical future of Europe has to be done together with it. How can we do it in the practical way? First of all, by including this attitude towards each and every activity of the projects that we do at the moment. I remember from the first meeting that we had when we were just starting the projects, presenting the different areas in which they will be realized, that this human aspect of them was perfectly visible. So I hope that we will be able to keep it in the work that we do here, and that will reflect the practical work of the center in the future.
Okay, thank you. Just going back to the central discussion this evening, which is about the legislation and the center, and all of the speakers have been very encouraging about the potential role of the center and its impact within various different areas. And we've heard this encouraging news that decisions will be made very soon about this towards the end of this, by the end of this year. So from the beginning of 2021, what can we expect from the new center? Rasmus talked about the relationship between the member states and the Commission in terms of the working of the center, that's not been fully realized yet. Is this something that's going to be sorted before Christmas, or is this something which we can expect to be an ongoing discussion during the early parts of 2021? So even though we might have the file closed or nearly closed by this year, what's it going to look like for us next year? Miguel, would you like to address that?
Yes, sure.
Yes, sure.
Echo again?
Echo again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if David, perhaps you can mute your microphone. Perhaps that's it. Okay, I'll try now. Yeah, actually, well, what can we expect next year? Well, the center, let's say the overall structure, because I recall it's a whole construction with the center in the middle, but then the network of national coordination centers, and then the community. So it's all of that. So it's a setting. It's a setting, to facilitate actually the action. I mean, and the coming together, because the center itself in a building, and that's not going to magically kind of bring very much. It's about creating that dynamic, if you like. And that's what we can expect next year to happen. Of course, there will be a lot of administration actually to work on, because this center must be able to do important things like manage EU funding. For that, tools are required, procedures, and some precautions. So that will have to be set up. So there's the whole administrative side that has to be attended to. But next to that, to put in motion that dynamic with actually the member states deciding upon the national coordination centers, for that matter, the governing board, starting to decide about the representatives that are going to be going there, and the strategic discussions to start with those discussions, to structure further the community concretely. So what I do expect for the next period, for the next year, is that all that let's say system architecture structure, that it's a facilitating structure, if you like, for coming together, taking strategic decisions, deciding on important issues such as they've been discussing tonight, so that we will, even if informal in the beginning, because not everything will be ready, of course, on the 1st January, but starting having these discussions. The Commission will support the transition towards the center, helping from an administrative perspective, but also actually in the meantime we are already preparing the work programs for the two programs that will fit into the center, and we are discussing those with member states already. Well, we will accompany that and progressively transfer the discussion and the decision towards the center, and in parallel very much this network of national coordination centers where they will have to do an important part of the work as well, with the national local cyber communities. And then nobody knows exactly how to go about it, but we already see, for one, that activity, this proposal has generated already a lot of discussions at national level, and that is what needs to crystallize over the next months.
Rasmus, yes.
Yeah, just very briefly. I guess you have to mute yourself again. Yeah, thanks. Just very briefly, I would like to mention that first of all, we are still waiting on the last, or negotiating the last element. So this will be an interesting evening. First of all, on the mandate of the council. I don't know if our German colleague would like to mention something about it, but this would be interesting. And then we will see where we are at on Friday, where we will meet again, if we can finalize or not. But there are still some tough issues left, and we would like to conclude, but we are not in a hurry. So if the German presidency is not able in agreeing on, for example, the question of the voting rights and the financial contributions, then the Portuguese presidency will take over, and then of course this will be part of their work in January. But no matter what, maybe there is an agreement on Friday, maybe we will have an agreement in January, but there will not be much more trilogues, I would say. So this would mean that afterwards it also depends on the will of all of the different actors and the contributions from them, how far this can go. One of the open issues, you've heard that some minutes ago, is still the question of the seat of the center. And as Parliament, we are not having a very hard position on this issue, but I would say that as more complicated the agreement on the seat of the center is, this would also mean that it would take much more time to implement the center, and then again we would lose time for discussing the content of the center. So my feeling is that we'll go some months before the center actually is able in acting.
That's an interesting point that you make there. Given these uncertainties about funding and relationships, does this mean that some of the cybersecurity calls from Digital Europe will be able to be launched before the Cyber Competence Center is fully operational? Or do we have to wait until the structure is in place and the administration before the distribution of funding? Are these discussions going to hold up some of the implementation of some of the programs that we're looking forward to in 2021? Yes, Miguel.
No, no. In the meantime, the Commission will ensure the transition, as I said. So we are preparing the work programs because we don't have a competence center yet, and we are also, we will continue doing what we're doing until such time where the center can take over. There is a matter to decide when the calls will be, because there will be, for Digital Europe, there will be like 4 calls next year, and we need to decide where to place them. But in the meantime, the Commission can ensure this, and the Commission will support the setup and a proper transition towards the center. So the cyber business cannot stop. Basically, I mean, we cannot just afford to wait for months doing nothing. We will continue doing the work, and then it will be in due time, provided, of course, there's a political agreement. That's a very important point. And there's a center eventually. We will then transfer in due time when the center is ready to take over.
Great. I think that's the answer we were all hoping you would give. So one of the questions from the audience is, do we think that a European cybersecurity tsar could make sense with a reporting line to all of the European institutions? Anybody got a view on that one?
Maybe I will say a word. I'm not in favor. I'm not in favor of creating the another supervisory authority in Europe just for sake of creating the one. If we have the precise idea of what should be the divisions between the remits of different authorities which are at the moment playing a role in this field, that would be great. Otherwise, we may go to the problem of creating the Tsar that doesn't remember which he or she created for. We have in all the situations where we create the supervisory authority, which is responsible for two or three values at the same time. This authority comes to the moment where it has to choose between the values. And we already see it in many of the EU countries with the problem of the supervisor for protection and the freedom of information, where these two values are to be realized at the same time, but to give it to the administrative body to decide which of them should be taken into consideration first is usually not the good solution. So I would be very cautious. Let's be sure that we know whom this the supervisor is reporting to, or whom, or what is his. Is it the role of the regulator, or the role of the ombudsman, or the role of creator of the new solutions, or the role of the animator of the development?
Yeah. Yes, Andreas, over to you.
Yeah, I only can support this point of view, but coming from a different argumentation. Actually, if we look into the arena we are talking just about, and we just establishing a competence center, that means we are putting in a central office, a central institution that gathers all the information from the member states we need to be very effective in steering digital Europe and horizontal Europe. That's one example that we are already on the track, and that we don't need an additional cyber SAR or any kind of institution. And I would like to remember that cybersecurity is not only the question we are talking about today. We have many different other aspects. For example, in the questions concerning international cybersecurity and the external policy of the European Union. Clearly, we have there a person that does external policy for the European Union, and cybersecurity is part of that. And similarly, it behaves for questions, for example, of cybersecurity in the police arena. We have Europol, and Europol has responsibilities about cybercrime. So anyone is well equipped with an instance who is responsible for coordinating the member states, coordinating the efforts of the European Union. And so I think we don't need any other coordination, especially I just recognized what that point Wojciech said, it's exactly the question to whom to report and what to report.
Yeah, I think those are very reasonable perspectives, and it was a question, but I think you've given it your best shot at an answer. I think it's probably far too soon to come up with a concept such as that. We have another question which is related to news report that today's counterterrorism agenda will include breaking of encryption to get access on encrypted data. Does this match our European cybersecurity goal to give confidence about digital infrastructures? This was an issue that made the headlines in the United States a few years ago in relation to a terrorist attack in Apple. Yes, two hands go up. Wojciech first and then Andreas.
Yeah, I think Andreas was first, actually.
Okay, Andreas, over to you.
Please go ahead first. It doesn't matter, but yeah, who should first? Okay, so I take it over. Clearly, first of all, I really recommend to read the Council conclusions that are at the basis of many of those reports that are now in the press. And actually, if you dive into this Council conclusions, and you will see there's no talk of weakening encryption, and there's actually no talk of general keys and things like what was reported on in the press. The question really is, how can we save our net to be the home of criminal cyber activities on one hand, but being also some a room where we want to negotiate and where we want to trade on the other hand, and how can we avoid that things like child pornography takes more space in the room, and how can we avoid being the net place only for hate speech and things like that. So the question is really, how could we find a way that is reasonable enough to protect our citizens' encrypted speech on one hand, but to give access in concrete circumstances to our police forces and intelligence services if necessary and if there is a warrant available. So that's the beginning of a question, not giving an answer, and that's the most important topic. Let's start about talking newly developed methods, how to deal with this huge, big problem we are faced in the net. And so let's bring together researchers, then service providers, on the other hand, people from standardization, and people really understanding encryption to find out whether 20 years after the first crypto debate, there are new possibilities in the room to make police work happen without disturbing the general safe communication of people in the European Union. So it's a question, it's not an answer.
Well, my intervention was exactly the same. So I would like to ask all of you to read the Council conclusions. I cannot deny that there are the people among the governments, also among the ministers, who strongly say about the weakening of the encryption, but this is not the result of the work in the Council. So the results of the work in the Council are slightly different, and they are exactly as Andreas said. Of course, we are very aware of this discussion. We are very aware of all the pros and cons of the solutions which are proposed. We remember that the solutions like that have the dual effect, so they are used for the good, but they can be used also for bad, and we have to remember about use. There was a discussion about it in the council. There are the ideas like that, but this is not in the council conclusions.
Okay, thank you. So I think you two are both in violent agreement with each other. So we're coming to the end of our time. There is a question. A lot of people who are in the audience and the call are from the 4 pilots, and the 4 pilots started in January or February 2019, which is almost 2 years ago, and we're finishing at different times over the next 12, 18, 24 months. One of the reasons we are called pilots is we are piloting for the center and the network, which are about to take place. So do we see any change in the way that these new developments are going to impact the 4 pilots? Is there anything that we should expect, maybe from the Commission or from the other institutions, that will impact the work of the 4 pilots for the remainder of their contracts? Miguel, do you have a view on that?
Well, we are having very frequent meetings with the pilots, as you know. Okay, the pilots have of course the contracts and their agendas to fulfill, but actually, as far as I'm concerned, I see that the pilots have to fully enter into the ramp-up phase that I was mentioning before, which is setting up the new architecture, the new community, the new structure. So this is what needs to happen next year, in my view. Of course, the research agendas, delivering on that's important, but then the collaboration, the governance part with the Atlas, as I mentioned, and other things, specific areas of work on which we are discussing frequently, cyber and education, cyber ranges, some of the cross-pilot work that we're having. I think I would like this to see as the embryo of concrete activities, both from the side, from the aspect of substance, but also of collaboration networks that can be then taken over, so that when the center and the architecture round come up, it's not a blank sheet. They can build on important areas of work that has been prepared by the pilots. Because I recall this was in the mission of the pilots when the calls were issued to contribute, and the proposal of the Competence Center was explicitly mentioned in these calls to prepare the ground, as it were, for when the center and network will be there. So that's what I expect for next year. So there will be this kind of parallel, pilots, towards the end. Well, still some time, but still, and the center taking up. So to have this kind of transition, that's why I expect that should be happening next year with the pilots.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think we can see that. And one of the exciting things about this event, which is called Convergence, is that we have come together as the 4 pilots organizing this for the first time, and we're demonstrating through the focus groups that we're going to be highlighting over the next 2 days, this coming together and the collaboration and the development of the embryo, as you said, for the collaborative network in the future, aided with the launch of Atlas in the new year. I see that we're almost out of time. I guess we could just go around the table and we are in December. We're almost upon the festive season and the new year. So maybe I could go around the table and ask each of you for your short message to the audience and to the community for the festive season and for the new year. So just a concluding remark. So we'll start as we started at the beginning. So Rasmus, would you like to kick off?
Thank you. Thank you. Just waiting for you to mute you so that I echo again. Thanks. Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for the discussion. I think it was quite interesting, and I just have one message. I mean, the work will start after we have finalized the negotiations on the Cybersecurity Center, or at least the work will continue. And this is basically what I would like to address at the end. I mean, on cybersecurity, like on many other issues, it's the collaboration between all the different actors, the cybersecurity community, but also the European institutions and the member states will be key. And I would love to continue the discussion with all of you in formats like this format tonight, but also in other setups. And I think some of the work you have done, for example, if you have been part of the pilots, already had changed a lot and will be included a lot also in the institutional setup for the cybersecurity work in the future. And it would be key to continue with the collaboration and having an exchange of views maybe in some months again, and see how things are going when it comes to the Cybersecurity Center, but also they're related to other issues.
Well, we look forward to that already, Rasmus. And I take it that you're going to be fully occupied in 2021 as you were this year, no doubt. So moving on, Andreas, would you like to wrap up? The German presidency finishes in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. Would you like to sum up?
Yeah. So I make it very short. First wish, I would like to see the file implemented on Christmas, or finished on Christmas. Secondly, let me see the Competence Center implemented next year. And third wish, let me be part of a conference next year of the same type we are in today, but let it be a physical one, and see everyone of you in good shape and health next year, but at Brussels. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we can all drink to that. Preferably we can drink to it together. Wojciech, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I also wish to meet you. David, you have to mute. Okay. First of all, I also wish to meet you at the next conference in the physical world. Have the possibility to exchange the ideas in the normal circumstances, not that electronic circumstances we have at the moment. I hope that we will meet all in good health, and I hope that we will be able to say that 1 year made a big progress in the works on cybersecurity in Europe, and at the same time that we didn't lose this attitude and this point of view from which we remember about the human being in all these activities. And I'm sure that the pilot project will lead us to the more secure, more safe Europe in next years. So see you at the next event.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Miguel, it's up to you to wrap up for us. Wojciech mentioned what he might hope for in a year's time. What would be your ambition to, if we were to reconvene at the next Convergence event, which will happen? It could be at this time next year or later. What would you hope to be able to report by then?
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You have to mute. remember, that's a lesson from tonight for future virtual conferences. Yeah. So first of all, thanks very much to the organizers, to the 4 pilots for tonight's, well, today and actually the next 2 days also. And so thanks very much for organizing this. You're asking me my wish for within a year. I mean, these days I'm living, I'm very short term. I mean, almost short-sighted. I have my wish horizon. It's like 2 days. But I really wish to see by the end of the year a successful, conclusion of a negotiation. Which I've been, involved with and supporting for more than 2 years. It's been great, but I think it will be great if it concludes. So I hope for the Parliament and the Council to be able to agree, knowing that of course the text won't be, the perfect text for everybody, but we need a basis. We need a basis to move forward. And as other speakers said, I look forward to end the negotiation and to start real implementation work, let's say, on the substance, on the practical collaboration, and that's what I hope that in 1 year time we will be able to talk about. So that having the negotiation behind us, the political agreement, the basis to work and actually be deep into the work already within 1 year time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Miguel. So I think we know what we all want Santa to bring in his sack in a couple of weeks' time. And it sounds very optimistically like that's quite possible. So I would like to wrap up by thanking all of you and Despina for participating this evening and for kicking off this 3-day event. This is just the beginning. The next 2 days are filled with some really interesting discussions and presentations and results of the work carried out by the pilots individually and collectively over the last 12, 24 months. So if we were physically present, I would ask the audience to clap. I don't know whether that's a good idea. Would people like to clap? That might crash the system. So
let's give it a try.
Give it a try. Kai is clapping. Excellent, excellent. It's very difficult in these situations where we don't see anybody in the audience and we don't know, we can't look into their eyes. Anyway, hopefully next year we will be able to meet again in person, all things given. And thank you again. And thank you to the audience for listening, for your questions. And I look forward to seeing many of you, if not all of you, tomorrow and on Friday. So have a good rest of the evening. And we'll meet again.
Thanks, everyone. Just to say one last thing. Tomorrow we begin at 9 o'clock in the morning, and there will be a new link. There is actually a new link in the participant letter that you've received. And thank you very much for all of your attendance, for all of your support in terms of keeping your cameras off and muting your microphones. And looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Again, we start at 9 a.m. in the morning. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.